Hello and welcome to the final video on the Civil War, and this one's more of a reflection on the war and how it's remembered and what it sort of means within the psyche of the United States. And we'll start with why did the Union win the Civil War and come back to the College Board's description from their key concepts, saying that the South showed daring and initiative early, but the North prevailed because of improved leadership, Grant, key victories, we'll get to those in a moment, an industrialized economy, and the purposeful destruction of Southern infrastructure, which is William Tecumseh Sherman's march. And the key turning points in this one, well, the Emancipation Proclamation in the fall of 1862, turning this into a revolutionary war and a total war. It's going to be a war to completely change the Southern society, not just defeat them militarily. This prevented Britain from recognizing the Confederacy and as a revolutionary war to destroy Southern society. Gettysburg and Vicksburg in July of 1863, and from this point on, Lee would not be able to wage an offensive war, and his hopes is to prevail, not lose, and defend, and hope for a political victory in the elections of 1864, which were foiled with the success of Atlanta in 1864. And Lincoln wins the re-election, and the march on Georgia begins. The dead. And this is dead, not casualties, not wounded, not missing, but dead. And we can see twice as much as the next highest one, which is World War II, and really pales to all the other ones in the number of dead. So they've really gone through the furnace. And this is why we think the Civil War as being the watershed moment in U.S. history, where it's nothing before and after is the same. And a lot of people questioning that the dead was a punishment from God for the sin of slavery. Now, the legacy and how to remember it. Well, as I mentioned, without a doubt, it's a game changer. And the nation before and after are nothing alike. And I've highlighted or underlined nation. Before they were, well, what were they? Were they a country? Were they a nation? Or were they a collection of smaller states? Well, that's been answered finally. They are a nation. And there's going to be sort of, from this point on, seeing themselves as only a country, and they'll change sort of the way they call themselves from the United States are to the United States is, and that means a lot of how you identify of what we are as a country. And how it's remembered and its impact on history is often dependent on who you are. Are you a Southerner? Are you a Northerner? Are you a former slave or an African American and today a descendant? That's going to really tinge the way that you might remember it. And for the South, there's the feeling of the lost cause, that what they had fought was for their noble way of life, and that's and they sort of failed in this noble adventure. And so the lost cause for Southerners, the way that they view it is that the legend of the lost cause began as mostly a literary expression of the despair of a bitter and defeated people over a lost identity, the Southern identity. It was a landscape dotted with figures drawn mainly out of the past: the romantic, chivalric planter, the magnolia-scented Southern belle, the good, gray Confederate veteran, once a knight of the field and saddle, and obliging old Uncle Remus. So these identities of this old Southern heritage, all these, while quickly enveloped in a golden haze, became very real to the people of the South, who found the symbols useful in reconstituting of their shattered civilization. They perpetuated the ideals of the Old South and brought a sense of comfort to the new. And so they're going to look at symbols of their past as heritage and something to be romanticized and idealized, which brings to the problem of the Confederate flag. And it means different things to different people. For the Southerners, white Southerners, this is a symbol of their lost heritage, their lost identity, and that noble lost cause of the Civil War. But to others, especially for African Americans, this flag is a searing symbol of racism and white supremacy. And when I looked for a picture of the flag and I did a search in Google Images, this came up quite commonly, that the flag is a flag of their heritage, not of their hate, not of racism. But I also get this one too, that it is a flag of white supremacy and racism. Now, how we remember Lincoln is also problematic. He was martyred because of his assassination, and he's revered as the great emancipator, especially by those slaves who were free. They saw Lincoln in almost a godlike reverence for him. But was he the great emancipator who ended slavery? And the answer is no, he was not. He was very much a moderate, and he freed slaves for military purposes. But really, who freed the slaves is they freed themselves through their actions, through their running away, revolting up, or with the help of the real Northern abolitionists, people like William Seward, the Secretary of State in Lincoln's cabinet, or the Grimke sisters, Angelina and Sarah Grimke, or William Lloyd Garrison. They're the ones who can take credit for helping to free the slaves. Now, Lincoln, sure, and he changed his position and he adapted, and he did take the great political risk of issuing the Emancipation Proclamation, but to call him the great emancipator is an insult to those individuals who took much more brave actions to free themselves. And judging Lincoln, he broke the Constitution. He suspended habeas corpus, which provides or guarantees a fair and speedy trial, and he threw thousands of people into prison, in Maryland in particular, but lots of newspaper editors throughout the country. Detained newspaper editors, politicians, supervised elections, especially in the border states, to make sure that they voted Republican, and a moderate abolitionist and in favor of recolonization for much of his political career. And the 13th Amendment, he actually perjured himself. He lied in order to pass the 13th Amendment. And I won't go into it much here, but I strongly recommend watching the movie Lincoln, a recent movie by Steven Spielberg, which is about the passage of the 13th Amendment. And you can see the actions that he took there, and you can judge him on your own right. Now, the war, and what does it mean for the before and after? It ended slavery. That's the main big thing. The 13th, 14th Amendments, the South is impoverished, completely destroyed, with their single largest capital investment, the slaves, not anymore. That loss of capital in the region completely ruined, humiliated. Whereas in the North, there's going to be a catalyst for the Rose Revolution will take off, and the primacy of a free labor capitalism. Rose reminders railroads, oil, steel, and electricity, the real industrial revolution. They're really going to undertake it and modernize now, with Hamilton's vision of the future definitely playing out, and Jefferson's really being destroyed in this war. The national government is strengthened with the primacy of the federal government over the state governments, and the executive branch greatly expanded as it executed this war. And the West will be opened up, all of the West. And the Homestead Act passed, which gave free land, and the U.S. Army sent in to destroy native resistance, final native resistance in the Western lands. And then we just look at some of the curious things that came out of the Civil War, the curios. The need to assemble, supply such a large army to fight these battles led to a lot of innovations and new understandings. Left and right shoes. We've got to produce shoes for thousands, millions of soldiers. And so we're going to get standardized equipment. And so left and right shoes came in. So did small, medium, large sizes of clothing. Because our soldiers are coming in different sizes. Canned food, can opener. Telegraph wires produce 15,000 miles of telegraph, including all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. And a transcontinental railroad begins construction during this time. better killing machines. Machine guns used for the first time near the end. Submarines were used. Lee, innovation of trench warfare in the final year of the war. Ironclad ships. ID tags to identify soldiers. Improved medicine and surgery. Anesthesia. Pain medicine for soldiers undergoing amputees. Better sanitation within the hospitals. Nursing really coming of age. That's a picture of Clara Barton, the mother of modern nursing. Ambulance service. Red Cross, which was founded during the war. And finally, baseball. A regional game from the Northeast that became a national game as soldiers from the Northeast introduced it. And rules got codified. You know, every different place sort of had different rules of how it went. And so the rules got written down. And it's being played in the camps, and including the prison camps, where this northern game got introduced to southern people. And this is a picture here of Ty Cobb, who many consider the greatest baseball player of all time. And he came from a southern family, and he did not fight in the Civil War. He wasn't even born during the Civil War. His heyday, his great time was in the 1910s, 1920s. But he's coming from a southern family who, you know, a lost cause family, that the Civil War was a noble cause, that they had failed in it. And Ty Cobb, a racist, violently racist man, but maybe one of the all-time greats. And this brings me to the final point I want to make, is that this was total war. And it ended with the victory of one side over the other, and the total destruction of the losers' political, social, and economic system, and an establishing of control by the winner, the North, over the losers' political, social, and economic systems. And that's true, and I want to bring a little synthesis to another war that was a revolutionary war, where one's society's economic, political, social system has to be completely destroyed. Now, in the South, that happened. Their political, social, and economic system completely destroyed and replaced by the North. And in some ways, the South adopted some of the things from Northern society. In this case, baseball, which is very popular in the South. So the synthesis to another war is World War II. And in World War II, Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany had to surrender without condition, as did the South in the Civil War, and their societies annihilated and replaced with entirely new societies, which the South had to do, as did Germany and Japan following World War II. And in Japan, they very much adopted, you know, the Western Republican ideals, the good ideals of the United States. And with it, they also adopted some American culture through American occupation. And we see, like baseball being spread to the South after the Civil War, we see baseball being spread to Japan after World War II. And leading to, a few generations later, a person who played the game much like Ty Cobb did, a great hitter, a smart baseball player, and he returning to America, maybe to remind Americans of the way that the game should be played. And this is Ichiro Suzuki, who many consider the greatest baseball player of all time. And when he came to America to play baseball for the Seattle Mariners, it was a time when a dark time in American history, where they were all on steroids and beefed up and just hitting home runs and setting home run records. And he came in at complete sort of opposite game, a game of being smart and being fast. And I think it's a good way to sort of end this whole Civil War, is that positives, changes sometimes do come out of them. All right, and just a little synthesis to World War II. All right, thank you very much. That concludes all of the lectures on the Civil War.